Okay, so this is the updated sail simulation that I made. Basically, I made this once I kind of finished all the electronics, and I just needed to finish up navigation on the boat. And so there were a few things I learned and had to change along the way, um, and I'll explain that in a second. But first, just to kind of generally describe what you're looking at. On this side, these gauges represent environment conditions. So, for example, the wind direction and magnitude. Um, and this is the water current direction and magnitude. Right now, it's kind of zeroed out, but I can change it, and you can see the boat kind of get pushed accordingly. I'm going to zero it back out for a second. And then this one just shows the boat direction and magnitude. So you can see it's traveling this direction right now, and this will change as the boat's turning. Okay, so these are kind of environment. This represents my one output, my rudder angle, which is just driven by a servo. Um, and then these values represent sensor input. So this first one is the GPS latitude and longitude. And you can see I kind of have two sets of values, one in black, one in gray. Gray is supposed to represent the actual latitude and longitude. But of course, the only way my boat knows where it is by relying on the sensor. And what I found is the sensor provides a fair amount of noise. So you'll see this black box, which represents the reported GPS location, kind of jumping around the boat. It's not always where the boat is. And that's roughly what I was observing when I played with the sensors, or the GPS sensor. So I did that, and of course the simulation is relying on the reported value. I also, and the same thing with the compass, I noticed a fair amount of noise, so you'll see it's jumping around too, even though the boat might be headed in a pretty much a straight line. It's kind of jumping around. So again, I make my code rely on that jumpiness, just because obviously that has to be factored in. And then the last one is the sail position. So originally, I was planning on being able to know the wind angle, and I had this kind of goofy way of thinking that I was going to be able to tell if the boat was stalled by relying on knowing the wind angle. The challenge there is if you use like a wind vane, for example, mounted on the top of the mast, as the boat's bobbing around in the water, especially rough water, that wind vane is just pointing all over the place. Even apparent wind aside from when the boat's moving, just sitting in the water, it's almost impossible to detect what direction the wind's coming from. At least with what I was playing with, I'm sure real boats have a way to solve that, but for the scale I was working on, I decided I needed a different strategy. So what I came up with is just a simple some reed switches. So they're basically magnetic switches. I put them at each side of where the boom can travel, and then I put basically some magnets underneath the boom. And the way I have it set up, there's kind of a track to ensure that when the sail is powered up, either with the boom on the right or the left, I can detect that with the sensor. And if I don't detect either side, either sensor, then I can assume that the sail is stalled, and therefore I need to generate my tacking waypoints, or what I'm calling my intermediate waypoints. So let me demonstrate that right now. So this is just showing like the sail is to the left right now, the C is center, and R is right. So when he turns around here, you'll notice it'll flip around. And these red regions, you can see it flipped there. These red regions are just thresholds, because since we have so much noise in the GPS location, and I don't think it's safe to assume that, for example, you will in fact ever be able to hit this waypoint. You might physically be there, but the GPS might not ever report you being there. So the idea was to put some buffer, make a threshold. So that's why the boat's turning around as soon as it gets within that region. Okay, so let me show now. Let's say the wind shifts. Okay, and it's now, yeah. So now the boat just reacts accordingly, and it those waypoints you just saw basically represent. Let's shift it again. Let's say it comes right at you at the boat. Why isn't it happening here? There we go. So you can see the intermediate waypoints are working pretty good. And then one thing I do check now that I wasn't previously, I believe this will work. Let's see here. So let's say the wind's blowing towards it. It's going to generate some intermediate waypoints, maybe. There we go. And let's say it shifts again. Well, then it'll just clear out the intermediate waypoints and go back to the original destination, or the primary waypoint. The other thing you might notice is right now I'm showing just 2 primary waypoints, so that's why it's just going back and forth. But of course, if I clear these out, I can put a whole bunch, and it'll just slowly work its way through each of the waypoints and pull them off the queue. So that's pretty much it. I just saved the last 2 waypoints for it to traverse back and forth while it's waiting to be picked up. So that's it.